Hello and welcome to the shop. You've probably recently watched the video where I showed you how I make a Gisi styled blank. And at the end of that video, you probably saw the pin that I turned from the blank that I made. In this video, I'm actually going to turn that blank for you. This is the blank I made in the video. I decided I didn't want the video to be too long, so I decided to break it into two videos. And today, we are going to turn this blank. I'm going to be tubing and turning this blank for a Sierra style pin kit. I've got a 27/64" drill bit chucked up in my drill press. And one thing I want to point out, when I first started turning these, I thought you would want to drill from the top of the chevron down through it. What I learned is when you enter the wood or the blank from the top down and you hit this 30-degree angle, it can cause your drill bit to careen off one way or another, and you don't get a nice even hole down through the center of the blank. If you flip the blank over and you drill from down through the center, when you hit this chevron, if the bit is going to move at all, it's going to move toward the center and help you drill straighter through the blank. Well, we lost a little chunk on the back side of the blank. I'm going to go ahead and find that in the dust here. There it is. I'm going to glue that back on. I think we'll be able to fix that no problem. Let me just find the proper way to put it in there. There it is. So I think if I go ahead and glue that back up, I can run it back through the drill press, clean that up, and I don't even think you'll notice it when all is said and done. I glued the chip back in with a little Titebond too, and if you look closely you can see the lines, but I would be willing to bet when this pin is turned you'll never know that chip is there. I am going to let this dry overnight as I want to make sure the Titebond has plenty of time to cure, so we'll be back to turn this tomorrow evening. I let the glue dry on my blank repair overnight, then I took it back over to the drill press and finished drilling the blank out. Everything went very well. I've got my tube scuffed up, and I'm going to use a little bit of this Loctite epoxy. It's got a 5-minute set time, but I will, once again, let this dry overnight before I attempt to do anything to this blank. Did a pretty fair job there. I didn't get any epoxy inside of the tube. I've got the tube set just below the level of the blank. I'm going to set this aside, let it dry overnight, and when we come back, we'll get it turned. I allowed the epoxy to dry overnight on my blank, and I'm here at my disc sander, and we're just going to square the ends of it up before we take it to the lathe. To turn this blank, I'm going to be using the new Magic Skew that I purchased at the Southeast Pin Turners Gathering. I got it from T-Shadow. You can find them on the web at tshadow.com. It comes ready to go with 2 cutters. I've installed the round cutter. It also comes with a square cutter and a spare screw. If you like a longer handle, this one's designed mostly for pin turners. He does sell a longer handle as well. It's kind of a neat tool. Notice the bar stock, how it has, it's hexagonal. So basically when it's laying on your toolbar or your tool rest, you can crank it and hold it at a perfect angle to cut your blank. So I've not used one of these before. I'm pretty excited about it. I've heard a lot of good things. Many of the guys at the show prefer this. This is their preferred tool for turning. So we're going to find out just what it does in this shop. I've got the blank chucked up. I think it looks pretty good. That's a little bit of epoxy there that rolled over the edge. On this side, the dark area, you can kind of see the crack because I smeared the glue to make sure I smeared it into the crack, but I'm hoping that that disappears as we turn. So we'll keep an eye on that when the pin is finished. Decided to stop and take a quick peek at the blank. Looks like it's turning really well. I think I did a pretty good job of centering the tube because as I look down the blank, it looks like it's centered real well on the turn between center bushings. I like the tool. It's a little tough for me to get used to because I don't use a lot of carbide, but I'm telling you what, man, this thing is sharp. And I've got to be careful because on my tool rest, there's a couple of little divots. I need to take some sandpaper and smooth that out because I can feel when I hit those divots. And at one point I saw where I kind of went in and sort of dished it a little bit right about in this area. I was able to clean it right back up once I got the feel for the tool. But so far I'm liking it. Let's get the lathe fired back up and finish this off. You might have noticed when I picked back up on turning this blank, I pulled my tool rest back a little bit. I don't want a lot of overhang. I've always been taught to keep the tool rest closer to the turning, but I felt like I was too close and I was transferring too much of the roughness of the tool rest into the blank, so I backed off a little bit. Seems to be working a lot better. I'm getting more comfortable with the tool. I think I'll probably have to turn half a dozen pins or so to really feel comfortable with it. But it is doing a nice job. I'm getting a nice smooth surface. Really nice cut. I'm liking the tool. All right, let me get the lathe fired back up. We are down to about 1/16 of an inch on either side. Need to go ahead and just clean it up very carefully. And should be a pretty good looking blank. Oh, I also want to point out, notice here, I cannot see where the blank cracked. I have looked and looked and looked and I cannot see the crack. And I think the reason why is, I believe now that it wasn't the drill bit that busted the blank. I think this probably had a hairline crack in it because it was such a clean break. And when I put it back together, it fits so tightly. Whereas when you chip something out with a bit, a lot of times, there's some rough edge or whatever on it. So it went back together nicely. It looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and put the tool away. I'm not going to make you guys watch me sand. I'll shut the lathe off for that. I'm going to get this sanded down and we'll come back when we're ready for some finish. I'm ready to start sanding the blank, and I wanted to stop and share a quick tip with you. Padauk is a gorgeous wood, but it is horrible about bleeding into other woods. It will bleed into this maple and turn it an orangish color. It'll also bleed into the walnut. I want to stop that from happening, and the best way to do that is to put a sealer on the blank. What I'm going to use is 1 coat of thin CA glue. Now, a lot of guys have contacted me and said, oh, use sanding sealer by Deft or whatever, and that stuff's great too. I'm 100% behind that. However, if I put Deft on here, I got to wait for a while for it to dry. If I put 1 coat of thin CA on here, 15 seconds after I put it on, I'm sanding. Another quick tip is I use a little painter's tape. I wrap my finger. This is the finger that I hold the towel with. I cut my towels into strips. I actually cut a paper towel in half, split it down the middle, and then I cut those in strips. I fold them in half, and then I fold them in quarters, and this is what I use for applying my CA. Some people will put CA on the paper towel and then wipe it on the blank. What I like to do is, with thin CA, I like to drizzle it on the blank with the lathe at a very low speed and wipe along the blank and just smooth it out, and then quickly dispose of the towel in my garbage bucket. If I'm using a medium or a thick CA, I will put a pea-sized dot on the paper towel and then apply it to the blank. So let's go ahead and put one coat of thin CA on this blank before we start sanding. Isn't that beautiful? That also kind of gives you a quick idea of what this blank is going to look like. It's absolutely stunning. I love it. The Padauk and walnut go so well together. And then, of course, maple goes with everything. So this is going to be a beautiful looking pen. The blank has been sanded. Notice that you don't see any staining in the maple. The CA glue did a great job of sealing it. I will let you know I sanded with the 120 so deep or so hard in that area that I did start to see some dust gathering. So I went ahead and cleaned the blank with denatured alcohol. And once it dried, I applied a second coat of the thin CA, and then I finished sanding. This blank, I don't want to touch it. I'm avoiding touching it because once I got it put into my nonstick bushings, I've already cleaned it with denatured alcohol, and it is ready for a CA finish. So I'm going to start applying my CA finish right now. I'm going to be using some of the AccuWipe lint-free paper towels that Bill Van sent me. I went ahead and just cut them into strips like I normally do. And we're just going to turn the lathe on and apply a coat of CA by drilling it on. Wow. I always love when that CA goes on. It just makes the blank look so beautiful. All right, I'm going to apply 4 more coats of thin, and once I get 4 coats of thin on, we'll come back and put several coats, probably 3 to 5 coats of medium, just depending on how the blank feels in between coats. I'm not going to make you watch me do that, but that is my regime. It's always 5 coats of thin, 3 coats of medium, and then I apply additional coats on an as-needed basis. I've got 5 coats of thin on the blank, and I want you to take a look at it. I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but look how smooth the surface of that blank is. I mean, obviously you're seeing the grain of the wood, which the medium will fill, but these paper towels, these lint-free paper towels, do not have a texture to them. So it seems like they lay the CA down a whole lot smoother. I will tell you something else. They are not as absorbent as a regular paper towel. So you've really got to watch when you're drilling it on because you get a little too much and you end up getting it on your thumb. Do not ask me how I know that. Just know that it is a possibility. All right, I'm ready to start putting some medium on here, and we'll come back in a few minutes and show you what it looks like. I've got a final coat of medium CA on my blank. I'm just having it spin dry. I try to avoid activator at all costs because there are repercussions sometimes from activator. It can cause the CA to dry too quickly, which can put cracks in the finish. Once in a while, it will haze a blank up. So I try to avoid it unless absolutely necessary. We're going to use something a little different tonight. Instead of micro mesh, I'm going to use this. It's an 8.5 by 11 sheet. I'm going to cut it into strips. It's called Zona paper. It comes in different colors, just like the micro mesh, and you basically just run through the colors from the coarsest grit to the finest grit, and it should put a beautiful finish on this. I can use it wet or dry. In this case, I think I'm going to try using it dry just to see what it does, and we'll see how it turns out. But like I said, no micro mesh on this one, so let's see what we get. The CA has dried. I ended up putting 5 coats of thin, 3 coats of medium. I like how the blank looks. It's super smooth. I think that the lint-free paper really helped because you get paper towels and they're quilted and they tend to leave a little bit of a rough surface. So kind of like how that turned out. Let's try this Zona paper out and see what we get. I've got the lathe running at about 550 RPMs, maybe 560. If I understand, Zona is non-abrasive. It is a polishing cloth. So we're just going to basically rub it around on the blank. It's one of those things where I should be able to use it on multiple blanks. It's not going to just be to where you wear it out and then you have to, you know, cut another piece immediately. Dulled the blank up a little bit, but that's okay. I saw that happening at the show. It'll dull up before it gets shiny again. Between the grits, I'm just kind of running my fingers over the blank, and that's just basically to remove any dust. I think the blank looks really nice. It's super smooth. It's like a sheet of glass. This stuff is supposedly amazing on acrylics. What I want to do now is, instead of buffing this, I've got a great smooth finish on it. I like how it looks. I'm going to try a little bit of the Renaissance wax and see what that does with the finish on this pen. Here's a quick shot of the Renaissance wax. Rick Troop sent this to me after the show. This was a canister that they used at the show during the demos, and you can take a look. It doesn't even look like they even touched it. It doesn't take much. But what I'm going to do with this is, Lowry Wilson was at the show, and I watched him do this, and I asked him, what in the world, why are you doing that? And he explained it to me. But what he does is just take your finger, rub it on the wax, and instead of using a paper towel, which basically could have some friction associated with it, or some not friction, but like grit associated with it, and could rough your blank up, he just uses his finger. Your finger's completely smooth. It's not going to scratch the blank, and you just work the wax in. Now, he did this with either Scratch X or Plastex, and but I'm thinking it should work the same with this Renaissance. I can feel the friction. You can feel it working, and you can feel it starting to slow the blank down. It's actually worked in really well. You see the blank kind of stopping. Okay, now what we want to do is buff it up. So what I'm going to do is take it off the lathe, put my buffing wheels on here, and I'm going to go ahead and buff it up, and I should get an amazing shine on this finish. I'm going to show you guys a little trick. I get asked all the time, whenever you do a CA finish, CA always ends up on your bushings, and you end up having a fingernail at the end of your blank. How do you get rid of that? I'm going to show you guys. Let me just loosen up my tailstock. And you can see that the bushings are stuck to the blank. What I'll do is I'll just kind of pop them off, and you see what I mean right there? Look at that fingernail. This is what you get. Okay. Let me show you how I take care of the end of these blanks. I'm back over at my sanding disc, and I'm going to put the blank on the jig, and what we're going to do is fire the disc up, and I'm just going to take it in. You don't want to put any pressure because you don't want to reduce the size of your brass tube. You've already trimmed it down to your brass tube. You just want to spin it and put just enough pressure to clean the end of the blank off. And what you end up with is a really nice finish. Let me see if I can focus that for you. A really nice finish on the ends of your blank. Let's get this back over to the lathe, and I'm going to buff it up with the buffing wheels. I've installed my buffing wheels. I've got the lathe set to right at 1,000 RPMs. We're just going to apply a little bit of this rosin. I've mounted the blank on a mandrel to make it easier to hold. The last thing I want to do is try to hold this in my hand and catch it on the wheel and throw it across the shop. And I'm just going to buff the blank. Oh, it's really starting to shine up nice. You could turn the buffing wheel up faster, but the problem is it'll build a little too much heat, and I've actually had issues with the CA finish and too much heat from the buffing wheels. Anywhere around 1,000 to 1,100 RPMs seems to work really, really well for me. I want you to take a look at that. Look at the shine on that. That is absolutely incredible. All right, I'm going to get this over to my press, and we're going to go ahead and press it into a kit. I'm ready to press this into a pin kit. I'll be using a Sierra style kit. It is gold and gunmetal, and I really like the Sierras, especially when I'm experimenting, because I used to do all of my experimenting with slimline pins. And the issue is you have to make 2 blanks to do a slimline. With a Sierra, you've only got to make 1 blank. So a lot of people contact me and ask, you know, what do you recommend for a great starter pin? And I've been recommending the Sierras over the slimlines. Now they're a little more than twice the price, but if you have to take them apart, you really only have to press the cap in, and you can knock that out pretty easy, and you can reuse the components with another tube. And the tubes are relatively cheap to buy in bulk. I bought this little device on eBay. It's a deburring tool, and what I've been doing is using it on my blanks. You simply insert it in the end of the blank, spin it a couple times. See the little bit of brass tube that comes out? What it does is it cleans up any rough edges, and it sort of chamfers. You can kind of see the chamfer on the inside of your blank, which will enable you to have a much smoother fit starting your component. I'm going to start my component right down the line, and I've got to be careful here. I don't want to start this at an angle, so I'm going to try to, there we go. Let's flip her around. I'm out of camera here for our camera range here for a second. All right, now let's see if I can start this straight. I'll rotate a little bit. I'm not doing a great job starting straight. I've been having some trouble lately doing this, and I think it's because I'm out of practice. There we go. Now I've got her. Before I finish it off, though, I'm going to pull it out and make sure that that clip goes right down that line. It's going to make for a nice appearing pin. All right, let's put her back in. We should be able to finish it off now that we got her started. That's the trick. You don't want to start that crooked, because if you do, what you're going to do is end up splitting your blank. I've had it happen, and it stinks after you work so hard on them. But take a look. I got a nice fit all the way around the outside edge of the blank. No splitting. The rest of the pin is relatively easy. We're going to grab our spring. I've already pulled a little rubber tip off of the ink refill. Just going to basically put the spring on, slide that into the nib, and the transmission on these pins threads in. So we'll just thread it in, try to get it tight. Work it a couple times, get that grease in there going, and then you just press it together. And what you end up with is an incredible looking pin. Take a look at that. Is that not beautiful? I am so happy with this pin. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. It's beautiful. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is a companion video to the making of the blank, and I didn't want to make the video super long, so I decided I would turn it in a separate video because I wanted to share tips and try out some of the new products that I got at the Southeast Pin Gathering. I couldn't be happier. Just look at the shine on that pin. I think it turned out amazing. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for both the making of the blank as well as the turning of the pin. I truly appreciate it. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.